Sean was the happiest man alive. He was mesmerized by the Morgans. He applied to their company 5 times with no replies, so this moment was the greatest moment of his life. But it turns out, he was never going to get the job. They called him for a job he never applied for. These are the Morgans, with the beautiful most popular girl in high school, named Flora. Sean and Flora were on the opposite ends of the high school spectrum. Sean was the president of the physics club, which had only 2 members, and a laughingstock among his peers. And Flora was just Flora, as her name suggests. Any room she walked into produced melting hearts, and Sean hated everything she stood for. So when her parents asked him to date their daughter, he thought this was the worst day of his life. But before he could reject it, they offered him his dream, a letter of recommendation to MIT. Flora had the worst boyfriend ever known to man. All he ever cared about was his hair product, and the only reason his products were a success was because of the buzz Flora created. But Flora found out soon enough he never appreciated it, and he caught him hooking up with his ex. She was heartbroken and wanted to go home, and Sean appeared out of nowhere to drop beer for the party. She ended up sitting in his car and asking him to take her home. He left his body alone to deal with the world. Sean knew how rich Flora was, but he was shocked to experience it. He found out soon enough, even with all this luxury, she was alone, and her parents were never around, always focused on their company. But she didn't have to tell him, their company was Sean's first love. She climbed upstairs, directing him to bring her things, and Sean tucked her up into bed. In her drunk voice, she asked him to stay, and he ended up doing so. He woke up to the worst possible experience. Flora's parents found a stranger in their home and acted accordingly, and that is when Sean told them how he was such a huge fan of their company and their work. Sean nervously left, and Flora's mom eavesdropped on a conversation with her friends. It turns out, as brilliant as she was, Flora always mimicked the lifestyle of whatever boyfriend she was dating, and that's when her mom got this brilliant idea. They were both intellectuals and wanted her to be one, and all she did was party, so her mom thought Sean was a perfect fit boyfriend. Sean's best friend and sister were Flora's biggest cheerleaders, and convinced Sean to do this. Danny thought going to MIT was his second dream to dating Flora, and this was an opportunity for him to get both. He was facing pressure from his guidance counselor, who believed his grades were very similar to many MIT applicants. A recommendation letter would definitely seal the deal. Danny pushed Sean to make this move that was going to change his life forever, and Flora's friends wanted her to move on from Tucker. She didn't want another boyfriend, but her friends suggested more like a distraction, and the person they had in mind was no other than Sean. With the help of Danny, he mustered the courage to ask Flora out on a homework date, and she accepted. Now Tucker did not like this very much, but he was stopped before doing something stupid. Flora was bold and flawless. She knew who she was, but Sean was reserved and uptight, but she never made him feel weird about it. She created an environment where he could be more relaxed, but something happened the more they spent time together. Sean soon realized Flora wasn't this dumb, out-of-touch girl her parents claimed she was. She was more intelligent than she let on, and now this cunning plan had become more complicated. The police unexpectedly show up to this party, and Flora ended up saving Sean's little sister, who was found drinking. Sean was super mad at himself and his sister that they were changing, and decided to ghost Flora for a day. Flora didn't take this very lightly, and had no idea what Sean was thinking. But Sean decided to talk to Flora about his distance, and that's when he told her how much he actually liked her. Their relationship took a turn for the better, and just like her parents predicted, her life changed. She began loving homework because that is all Sean did, even rejecting invites from her friends to stick around with Sean. Flora started opening up to him in ways she never did with anyone else, and things started getting serious, and that is when the night happened. Flora had waited long enough, but Sean acted weird the whole time. Her parents arrived home, and they had dinner together. And that is when Sean told them Flora had 1500 on her PSATs. They were in total shock, and Flora did not seem to like that he did either. Flora seemed to think Sean cared more about her relationship with her parents more than he actually wanted her. But that is exactly what he was paid for. He had to make a decision, Flora or his dream, and guess what he chose? He gave up the money and ripped the recommendation letter to go get the girl. They consummated their relationship in the most beautiful way, and Flora was the happiest she's ever been. But this happiness did not last very long. News spread fast, and somehow, Tucker found out about Sean's deal with Flora's parents and showed up unexpectedly to mess up their party. Flora could not believe her ears. She really believed she found a good guy, better than the douchebags, but it turns out he was just a black sheep with ripped jeans. However the saying goes, 2 lovebirds turned into 2 broken hearts, and Flora ripped off her parents for giving her heart to someone who could break it. At that moment, they realized how stupid their idea was. Flora stayed in bed, soaking in tears, and Sean called incessantly to console her. But Tucker took a bold step, going to her home to win her back. Somehow, she ended up agreeing to go on a getaway with Tucker to California on the same day she was supposed to take her SATs. As she prepared for her trip, her mom finally spoke to her like she should have from the very beginning. She told her how much she loved her with whatever decision she made and how she was so proud of her. She ended up still taking the trip with Tucker, but somehow, at the airport, she realized Tucker would never see her for who she was. And Flora's mom gave Sean the push he needed, telling him her flight will leave in an hour. He drove as fast as he could to hopefully meet her, and he did. She hoped he wasn't there to convince her to take the SATs, and he wasn't. He was there to tell her how much he loved her, but she wanted to take the SATs anyway, and Sean was ready if she was. He ended up driving her to the test, and she made her parents more proud than they could ever imagine. Sean did get his dream after all, receiving his acceptance to MIT, and they both stayed away from each other, knowing they were always around. 1 year had passed, and they both met at their favorite spot. Sean was happy to be at MIT, but not as happy as he was when he was with her. Once again, they realized kissing was the easy part, and the light fades into the dark. Moral of the story?